where Ethiopia is talking. Beyond skepticism, what I'm witnessing at Ethiopia's national dialogue. Hello everyone, this is Independent Voice and I am Mamay. There has been no shortage of commentary about Ethiopia's national dialogue. Some have praised it, others have questioned it. Many have already reached conclusion about what it is or what it's not. But after participating in one phase of the dialogue myself, I believe there is another perspective that deserves to be heard, not because it settles every question, but because it comes from inside the process itself. Some observers question its credibility. Others question its inclusiveness, independence, timing, or ability to produce meaningful change. Such questions are not inherently unreasonable, particularly in a country with Ethiopia's complex political history, unresolved tensions, and painful experiences of conflict. But there is something missing from much of the discussion taking place outside Ethiopia. The voices, presence, and determination of the people who are actually in the room. I am attending Ethiopia's national dialogue, and I have now become an eyewitness, not merely to a conference, but to Ethiopians undertaking a difficult work of speaking, listening, disagreeing, deliberating, and searching for a way forward together. I'm not recording to rebut any particular article or silence legitimate criticism, nor am I suggesting that every concern has been resolved or that every Ethiopian agrees with the process. I am speaking because what I am witnessing deserves to be part of the public record. Ethiopia is, in fact, talking. The first truth that must be stated clearly is this: Ethiopia is engaged in a national dialogue. Not symbolically, not simply through speeches delivered from a stage, not as a gathering in which a few officials speak while everyone is listening. The process I'm witnessing is active, structured, layered, and unmistakably participatory. Approximately 4,000 participants have gathered from communities across Ethiopia, federal and regional administrations, and diaspora. Official description of the broader process also identify political parties, religious institutions, civil society organizations, women, youth, media representatives, public servants, and other sectors of society among those engaged in the dialogue. But numbers and categories alone do not explain what is taking place. The significance is visible in the people themselves. They have come from different regions, communities, professions, and institutions, political perspectives, religious traditions, and lived experiences. University representatives are present. Faith communities are present. Women and young people are present. Political parties, civil society organizations, government institutions, media professionals, community representatives, and ordinary citizens are present. These are not merely observers placed in a room to create the appearance of diversity. They are participating. They are speaking. They are questioning. They are challenging ideas. They are listening to one another. They're working through areas of disagreement and identifying points upon which consensus may be possible. That distinction matters. Participation is not the absence of disagreement. A genuine national dialogue should not be measured by how quietly people sit or how quickly they agree. If everyone entered the room with the same political interpretation, historical experience, grievances, priorities, and proposed solutions, there would be little need for a national dialogue in the first place. Dialogue exists because disagreement exists. What I have witnessed is not a carefully staged display of unanimous thinking. Participants are engaging openly with the agenda before them. Discussions can become intense. Different views are expressed. People advocate strongly for the communities, regions, and institutions and constituencies they represent. but they remain in the process. They continue talking. They continue listening. They work towards identifying common grounds without pretending that significant differences do not exist. That is not a weakness of the dialogue. That is the work of dialogue. Consensus does not require the erasure of disagreement. It requires people to remain at the table long enough to determine what they can build together despite it. The people are not waiting for the outsiders to validate their desire for peace. One of the most striking things I have observed is how focused the participants are on the task before them. Outside the room, there are political analyses, social media narratives, accusations, counter-accusations, and international interpretations of what Ethiopia's national dialogue is or is not. Inside the room, the focus is different. The focus is real. The participants understand that they are representing real people and real communities. They know that they are carrying concerns that extend far beyond themselves. They're not consumed by every external headline, political characterization, or social media argument. They are focused on Ethiopia. This does not mean that they are unaware of criticism, nor does it mean that international perspectives have no value. Ethiopia does not exist in isolation, and credible observation can contribute to accountability. But there is something encouraging about witnessing Ethiopians refuse to surrender ownership of their national future to outside interpretation. The people in the room do not appear to be asking whether every international commentator approves of their participation. They are asking what must change, what must be preserved, what must be confronted, and what kind of country are they prepared to help build. Their confidence does not come from the absence of skepticism. It comes from their proximity to the process. They can see it. They can test it. They can speak within it. And from what I am witnessing, they want it to succeed. The participants are more than names on an invitation list. It's important to understand how consequential representation is in a process like this. Many of those participating did not simply appear in Addis Ababa because they were personally selected by a government official or handpicked to a predetermined position. The Commission has described a multi-level process of identifying participants and collecting agendas through communities, waradas, regional states, federal institutions, stakeholder groups, and other constituencies. Its formal mandate requires it to bring together representatives from diverse segments of society and to identify participants according to established criteria. From what I have learned and witnessed, many participants arrive through processes of nomination, representation, and selection within the constituencies from which they came. That does not mean every Ethiopian will agree that every community or political interest is represented perfectly. In a nation as large, diverse, and politically complex as Ethiopia, no gathering of several thousand people can represent every voice, grievances, or opinion with mathematical precision. But it is equally inaccurate to look at this gathering and dismiss it as though the people in the room have no legitimacy, no independence of thoughts, or no connections to the community they represent. They're not props. They're actually the heroes. They are Ethiopians with voices, experiences, expectations, and convictions of their own. The agenda is broader than political competition. There is a tendency to interpret nearly everything in Ethiopia through the narrowest possible political lens. Which party benefits? Which group gains influence? Which political actor controls the narrative? Political questions are certainly part of a national dialogue. Questions concerning governance, national identity, constitutional arrangements, institutional peace, justice, historical grievances, and the relationship between citizens and the state cannot be separated entirely from politics. But what is taking place is larger than competition among political elites. The dialogue encompasses both high-level national questions and detailed concerns that affect how people experience their country, communities, government, identity, security, opportunity, and future. Not every concern being raised can or should be reduced to partisan positioning. Participants are discussing matters that affect their daily lives and the lives of the people they represent. They're not merely debating who should hold power. They are considering what kind of national framework can allow Ethiopians to live together, govern themselves, address long-standing grievances, and move forward without repeatedly returning to violence. For that reason, I will not disclose details that belong within the protected space of the deliberation. A meaningful dialogue requires room for people to speak candidly, without every unfinished thought immediately becoming a headline or political weapon. But I can say this: the process is comprehensive. It reaches both broad national questions and specific concerns. It is designed to encourage participation, deliberation, dialogue, and the gradual movement toward consensus. The media are not merely standing outside the door. Another misconception that deserves correction. Members of the media are present, and media representatives are not limited to filming ceremonies or reporting from outside the deliberative process. They also have representation within the dialogue. That is significant, and it should be noted. The presence of media does not, by itself, answer every question about transparency or press freedom in Ethiopia. These larger questions remain legitimate subject for continued examination. But an accurate account of this particular process must acknowledge that media professionals are present, observing, reporting, and through their representatives participating. The reality is more complex than the suggestion that the dialogue is taking place behind a completely closed door, removed from public visibility or independent observation. Hope is not same as blindness. The word I continue returning to is hopeful. Not because the disagreement have disappeared, not because the process is easy, not because everyone agrees, not because one conference can instantly repair generations of political conflict, mistrust, violence, displacement, grievances, or trauma. It is hopeful because people are willing to participate. It is hopeful because they are taking the responsibility seriously. It is hopeful because they are speaking with conviction while remaining engaged with one another. It is hopeful because, despite Ethiopia's painful experiences, thousands of people have chosen to enter a process built around words rather than weapons. Hope should not be mistaken for naivety. To recognize something constructive is not to deny that problems exist. To acknowledge progress is not to abandon accountability. To support dialogue is not to declare every institution perfect. It is possible to remain watchful and still recognize what's happening. It is possible to ask hard questions and still honor the courage required to sit across from one another. It is possible to demand that a process continue improving without diminishing the people who have already invested themselves in it. An outside interpretation is not the whole story. Political commentary produced outside the room may identify genuine concerns, but it cannot, by itself, offer a complete account of what is happening inside. An external analysis may examine laws, institutions, political exclusions, official statements, or historical patterns. Those perspectives matter, but they are not substitutes for the lived reality of the dialogue. They do not fully capture the energy of participants who are eager to speak. They do not capture the intensity of the deliberation. They do not capture the patience required to work through disagreement. They do not capture the seriousness with which many participants approach their responsibilities. And they do not capture the visible desire of ordinary Ethiopians to move their country away from violence. Any credible assessment of the national dialogue must make room for both scrutiny and eyewitness testimony. Skepticism should not become a predetermined conclusion that refuses to recognize evidence inconsistent with it. Criticism should not require us to dismiss the agency of thousands of Ethiopians who have chosen to participate. And political interpretation should not be allowed to erase the people themselves. They are the heroes. Once again, they are the heroes. Choosing peace is an act of national courage. No one should claim that Ethiopia's national dialogue will solve every national problem on its own. The success of the process will ultimately depend on what happens after the discussions, how consensus is documented, how recommendations are handled, how institutions respond, whether the public remains informed, and whether the commitments developed through dialogue are translated into meaningful action. The process must be judged not only by the quality of the gathering, but also by the integrity of what follows. Yet we should not underestimate the importance of the choice already being made. A nation accustomed to political dispute escalating into hostility needs a new civic practice. A nation carrying layers of historical pain needs space in which those experiences can be expressed without producing new victims. A nation exhausted by violence needs the courage to believe that disagreement does not have to end in destruction. That is what I see beginning here. I see Ethiopians who are not pretending that the work is finished. I see people willing to argue without abandoning the room. I see representatives carrying the concerns of communities that expect to be heard. I see a process that is more participatory, more serious, and more comprehensive than some external portrayals suggest. Above all, I see people who appear ready to choose dialogue over violence. The world may continue debating whether Ethiopia's national dialogue deserves to succeed. Inside the room, Ethiopians are doing the work required to give it that chance. And that too must be witnessed. Thank you for listening. This is not the end of Ethiopia's national dialogue, and this is certainly not the end of this conversation. As the dialogue continues, I hope to continue sharing what can responsibly be shared from inside this historic process. Until next time, this is Independent Voice, and I am Mamay. Remember, use your voice to make a difference and to never silence others.